Welcome to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast, where my guests share their stories of addiction, how they recovered, and the tools and practices they use to stay sober now. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Arlena.
Yeah, no, this is a long time coming. We connected and then man, life just gets busy. So I'm glad that we're finally doing this. You have so much to share. You have like this effervescent personality, and so it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who's just like really connected, who understands pain, but is really connected to joy. So I'm so glad that we have this time together today.
Oh, me too. And you know what? I always say this expression of like, isn't it great if we can struggle well? It's like sometimes people think, oh, positivity or positive psychology or happiness is like everything's sunshine and butterflies and toxic positivity. Really, it's about this idea that we can, yes, be in darkness and have pain, but we can also have joy and happiness and positive emotions as well and hope, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
so that is what brought us together. We have a lot in
It
common.
is. Yeah, yeah. I have my normal disposition is pretty sunny, but it's like, have you ever seen those memes that say like I'm 90% spiritual, 10% bitch?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I still got a little hood rat in me occasionally, but we try to keep her somewhere else. And so we're going to talk a little bit about your book too, Recovery Without Rock Bottom, Reclaim Your Life from Addictive Behaviors. The cover of your book is so beautiful and has so much positive and useful tools. Like I'm all about practical tools that allow us to sort of reconnect with our joy because I feel like in a lot of programs, they talk about, trying to do God's will, whatever that means for a lot of people. But to me, that means following your joy, reconnecting with what it is that you really want, and being led by joy. So you seem to really embody that. So we'll dig into that too.
Oh my gosh. And you hit the nail on the head is the opposite of addiction isn't necessarily sobriety. It can be happiness. The opposite of addiction could be well-being and happiness. And we have so many tools and so many researchers and psychology streams and therapies that can help us that we're not necessarily using when it comes to addiction and recovery. And so it's really exciting that we can tap into that exactly like what you just said.
Yeah, and you're hosting this very popular podcast, Saving You is Killing Me. And before we hit record, we were talking about, how can we, best serve the audience who is listening. And I, just shared that under every alcoholic addict is a codependent. And I don't feel, this is just my personal opinion, that we really give enough weight to how destructive codependency can be. It can be so dark. I mean, it's literally saving you is killing me. That is such a dark place. How did you come to decide to do this podcast?
Yes, yes. Well, I had the horrible experience of loving and losing someone to addiction, and he was my world.
Mm.
And I, so many times it was a 9-year relationship, and I would say he was in active addiction for the last 2 years of that. And he had hidden addiction. He hid it very, very well. I knew he had issues with alcoholism and that, so I knew that. But then he had this hidden addiction. So many times it was so hard because I was it was like I was looking at an empty vessel of a human that he used to be, which broke my heart because I loved this man and he was changing, and just like I never knew who I was going to get. And it really brought me to a very dark place. And I would look in the mirror and I would say, oh my gosh, like I've lost my sparkle. I was so stressed. I was hyper vigilant. My world was his world. I was trying to figure everything out, trying to save, fix, rescue, all the things. And it was my saving him was breaking me. And I oftentimes would say, oh my gosh, saving you is killing me. And then
Yeah.
that's where the birthplace, like I have training in psychology and resilience and happiness studies and everything. And this was one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through. And I thought, I am not putting this pain to waste. And so I turned my pain into purpose and I created the book, Saving You is Killing Me, and the podcast, as well as the support group. So that's where it was birthed out of. And I just knew that there needed to be some support, because for every one person that's struggling with addictive behaviors, there is a whole circle of people around them that love them so much and want so much for the best for them. And it's just so hard to watch someone you love destroying themselves.
Yeah, that is so painful. I mean, when somebody you love is suffering just, in daily life, let's just call it that, this pain is like a spectrum, right? From everything's fine to, standing at the abyss of death's door.
Yeah.
Like it's a spectrum, right? And to watch somebody, even at the higher end, is uncomfortable. But then when you get into crisis, it creates so much confusion because I would imagine, and I've had a lot of people in my life that it just consumes me. Like I've had sick people in my life, and I just get consumed by trying to fix them, rescue them. I changed my person. I had a sister when I was growing up with mental illness, and I vacillated from trying to control her to then persecuting her for not being different. This is a long time ago when we really didn't have a lot of information about mental illness and things like that. But addiction is, another form of mental illness and it's so incredibly destructive. So when you first met him, was he using, or you said it was a hidden addiction? It
Yes.
wasn't, was it not alcohol or drugs or?
So yeah, it was his drug of choice was cocaine,
Uh,
and that's what I just found out about. It was hidden for so long, and I actually, ironically, my hairdresser, while she's blow drying my hair, she's like, and she knew that I was struggling, because you have conversations with your,
yeah,
she's
they're
my
like
friend.
magical. Yeah.
Exactly. And so she's like, Andrea, do you think that he might be doing cocaine? And then I'm like, it was like a light bulb went off on the top of my head. And I'm like going, oh my gosh. I literally went to my car and started Googling, how does someone act when they're on cocaine? This and that. And so yeah, so then it was like the curtains had just opened up, because it explained so much. I thought that we were dealing with bipolar, perhaps depression, the
Oh,
ups and
wow.
downs, chronic sinus infections. Like I was washing his pillowcase like 2 times a week because it was bleeding. He was
He would
always
have,
blowing his nose. I bought him supplements for, to help him with boosting his immune system. I was encouraging him and making healthy meals for him that he would never eat. They sat on the stove all the time. Like there's like so many things. It's like, why are you staying up all night? You need sleep, you're sick. But meanwhile, it's like, no, he was binging all night and like staying up in the garage or at his friends. And it was so hard, and it was so hard to watch. And
yeah.
I showed up actually the way any loved one would show up for someone that they absolutely love and care about. And that's what we do when we are the bystanders, or we're, because we love this person so much. And I actually, and in my community, we kind of don't love the term codependency or being
Oh,
codependent,
right.
just because it's another label that we are
Yeah.
like that, or we're an enabler, or we're codependent. And so what happens is like I like to soften it, and I like to say, yes, codependency is a thing. And yes, it means that you've lost yourself in trying to fix or save or rescue or help someone else. But I have to say, you are showing up the way any loving, kind, caring human would show up for someone that they love and care about, right? And so there's no shame in that. So first of all, like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no shame in the fact that we are doing our best with the information we're given. We're trying to help someone we love. We're trying to be there for them. The only problem with that is that sometimes it can move us into, as you know, enabling, or like I was paying his truck payments. I was like, covering for him when he wouldn't show up for family functions. I would explain out why he's sleeping to the kids. Like he's got a cold, he's got to rest, he's sleep for days. And so that is where the enabling comes in. So the problem becomes is when you are trying to do all these things to save, fix, rescue, and then you're losing yourself in the process. So self preservation is just as important as also being there and influencing and being supportive, compassionate partner.
I love how you say that, a lot of these behaviors are rooted in being a loving person, that you would do these things. Any loving person would try to help the person that they see suffering, right? That's like a natural human instinct. And it seems to be problematic when it's out of balance, but I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like it's crossing an invisible line where it's hard to tell when you've crossed the line. What was that experience for you like when you realized that maybe you were overgiving or that you lost yourself? Was it like like in AA or 12 step, they have like this moment of clarity, like this sort of, did you have a
Yeah.
moment like that or was it a process?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you say it's a process. Like suddenly it's like it's not a sudden thing. It's like, oh my gosh, like it is just the slowly but surely losing of yourself.
Yeah.
And it is the preoccupation. You start realizing that saving them at the sacrifice of your own needs and at the sacrifice
Yeah.
of preserving your own well-being. So their challenge and what they're dealing with becomes your focus, and you basically are, and then it's not always met well, and then you're met with a wall sometimes, and then it's like it knocks you down even further. So I
Mhm.
don't think that there was one particular moment. I think it was a slow progression of me losing myself. And for a lot of people in the support group and a lot of people that love someone with an addiction, it is that slow progression because, and then, or it's even highs and lows. And then sometimes you get a glimmer of hope of the person that you fell in love with or the person that you love, maybe the loved one's your child. You get little glimmers of the person that you know that they are. And then you're like, oh my gosh, and that offers hope. And then suddenly, and then this is where that trauma bond kicks in. It's like where you're like so relieved when they come back and they're maybe seeking recovery, or maybe there you see, or you get a love letter saying, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. I'm going to fix things. I'm going to do things right. I'm going to show up for you. You mean the world to me. It's like, okay, great. And then it's like you're hit the reset button. So that's why it's not just one moment. It kind of goes back and forth around in circles. It's like a roller coaster.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
it's so hard. And it is one of the hardest things. So I think it is just a slow deterioration of yourself and your own needs, and you are caring so much for it's like that imbalance, exactly what you said. And then suddenly it's like the teeter totter tips too far one way, and then it's just like you feel like yourself is drowning. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, did you reach a point where you were just like, I would imagine it erodes your self-esteem. Like your self-esteem gets tied up in whether you can help this person or not. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So like I said, like here I am thinking, "Oh, okay, I'm equipped for this. Like I can help them. Like I have training in psychology. I've got
Yeah.
my master's. Like I should be able to fix this." And I'm so I was doing so many things, and I remember just starting to notice that I started getting more and more depleted, and I forgot your
Mm,
question. I'm so sorry.
I did too.
It was good. Don't you love when that happens?
Yeah, super fun. Welcome to menopause for me. I don't know where you're at. You look too young for that. But no, basically it was like the deterioration of your self-esteem. Like we lose
Oh,
ourselves and then we start feeling bad about who we are because we feel like we should be able to like solve this problem and then we can't.
yeah, and it's so true. We definitely like I lost myself. I completely lost myself. My self-worth was so attached to his behavior. So
Mm.
he would come in and love on me and be able, like, a couple nights he would sleep in the bedroom with me. We would have intimacy, and then he would just disappear and not come home, and then I'd be worried, like, am I not fun anymore? Am I not Like maybe I made him grow up too fast, because he was a lot younger than me. It's like, am I not sexy enough? Am I not like, am I driving him away? Am I causing this addiction? Like, and sometimes he
Mm.
would say I was like, he would pick
He
fights with
blame
me.
you.
He would blame me, he would pick fights with me, and he would, because he want to leave. So it
You
got to
want
the
to leave.
point where I was like, okay, like I realized the gaslighting, I realized the manipulation. And so sometimes I just have to stay strong in myself and say, okay, I know what you're doing here. We don't need to pick a fight. If you want to leave, just go. Let's skip the fight. It's too draining for me. And he would go. And
Oh,
so
wow.
and then it got, yeah. And then you start questioning yourself, like, am I sexy? Am I fun? Am I, enough? Or like, what can I do? Am I not doing enough? Am I doing this wrong? Like, it's such a challenging circumstance. Is he really mad and upset because maybe I have done something wrong? Or, so you start questioning yourself, and really sometimes it's just like withdrawal, or, the ups and downs and the depletion of dopamine and things like that. So,
Yeah.
I've come to understand it now, but when you're in the muck, like you said, it erodes your self-worth, your self-esteem. And I have a training in all of this, and it was
I
like so
know.
hard. And I was very knocked down. That's why I say I lost my sparkle. It was
Yeah.
killing me.
Yeah. And listen, you're very sparkly. So,
I got it back.
yeah, effervescent and bubbly and sparkly are all words I would use to describe you. And I'm glad that you got it back. Um, how did it end? Because it sounds like you lost him. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And so I believe that I was sticking around because, you have the through thick and thin, till death do us part. And I
You were
was also,
married.
no, we weren't married.
Oh,
We were
committed.
engaged. We were committed 9 years. And, and so I was in it. I was willing to like, and I was also scared that if I were to leave him, that he would spiral even worse. So my fear was
Oh,
that if I did leave, and he was in a very dark place, and I actually, found him a few times, overdosed and things like that. And then I also one time walked into the garage, and I thought he had taken his life because his feet were hanging down from the attic. And when I went up to the attic, I like touched his leg and it just swung, but he was passed out in the attic, lying on the floor with his feet hanging down. And
oh
thank
my
gosh I went up
God.
there, because he was smoking too, and it was lit. So there could have been a fire. And I have got two kids, and so it's just like, and it's so funny because listen to your intuition. Something told me to go out there. My power in my bedroom went off, so my fan light came on, and that's when I went out there and I found that. Anyway, I digress, but it was such.
But I don't know why, but intuition has been coming up over and over and over again in my world. And so yeah, I just want to tell people to listen to your intuition because you just never know where it's going to lead you. But so you found him in the garage
Yeah. And
and
so how so many times I'd be like, okay, for sale signs got to go on the end of the driveway. Like, even though I owned my home, and I made sure that, he didn't have any equity when he moved in. So we signed a cohabituation agreement. Thank goodness. Anyway,
yeah.
so I believe, so one day he disappeared for, well, one weekend. He was gone for the whole weekend. And I'm like, I just thought, okay, it's another binge. He'll come back. He's going to say that he loves me. He'll patch it all up, and then we'll go through that whole trauma thing again, that cycle. And then he didn't. He didn't come back, and he was missing, gone. And then I got a text saying that we're not working, and this was now after I found out about his addiction. So he couldn't hide
Oh,
it from me
okay.
anymore. And then he was trying to not use, and I said, are we dealing with an addiction? Like, do you need treatment? Do you need to seek recovery? Like, what are we dealing with here? He's like, no, no, I've got it under control. I don't have a problem. I'm going to fix this, make it right, blah, blah, blah. And so that lasted about a month, if that. And then this is when he disappeared, went on quite a few binges. And then he broke up with me and didn't say bye to the kids, didn't say bye to me, and asked me to put all his stuff in the garage. And so I did. And I remember watching him on the camera coming to pick up all his stuff, including his dog. And he told me to put his dog in the garage as well. And so I just remember thinking that, okay, like, so first of all, is a cowardly way to break up with someone after being with them for 9 years. And also, like, just a month before that, communicating that you love them, you're going to make it right, blah, blah, blah. So very confusing for me and disrespectful and cowardly. And then, but I realized that he did what I didn't have the courage to do. And maybe not the courage, maybe I didn't have the clarity to do it. And I was
Mm.
willing to give him another chance again and again. And so, but then I realized so fast, once all this stuff was gone, I actually went into the garage and he had spray painted all the windows black.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
I took a razor and I started scraping off all the black spray paint, and I remember having all this shavings of the spray paint all over me and all over my hands. And I'm like crying and scraping and like, but I
Oh,
remember the light coming through. And it was such a metaphor for me because the light started coming in, the garage started brightening up, and it was the darkness of his addiction was leaving my life. And it was actually,
oh,
oh my gosh, thank you, universe, actually. But I was also very sad and torn and hurt,
sure.
and angry. And so, but then I started realizing, okay, now I need to recover. I need to recover Andrea, get back to the Andrea that,
Yeah.
I once was, and remember my worth, remember my sparkle, remember. And so the recovery isn't just for people struggling with addiction or addictive behaviors. It's for all of us. So
Yeah.
the true meaning of recover is to recover, reclaim, get back and heal, right? So if you have a bone
Mhm.
that's broken, you're going to recover, or you
Yeah.
have you lose a wallet, you recover it and get it back. And so that's the birth of recovery without rock bottom, and also the whole process of starting to reclaim your life and getting your life back.
Yeah. In honesty, that does sound pretty rock bottom though. I mean, that sounds so painful. But what a blessing. And man, I gotta tell you, that metaphor of removing the darkness and allowing the light to come in.
And
I
it's
don't,
messy, healing is messy, so I
it's
was getting all
messy.
messy.
Yeah, yeah, but you were like scraping away the darkness. I mean, addiction is so dark, and addiction to people can be really dark too. And what was your process of, because I feel like there's a lot of shame in thinking, why can't I save this person? What, this, when you lose yourself, we typically blame ourselves. And listen, I seem to attract like all these high achievers. Like we are a group of people who assume a lot of responsibility, right? So how did you go about identifying what was your responsibility, like building your self-esteem back up and taking responsibility for your feelings, and then letting go of what's not yours, because that can be super confusing.
Yes. And I always say, Andrea, this is not your burden to carry. This is not your backpack to put on. So it took me a long time, and I would go back and forth. I would go back into the
Okay.
rescue, or I would come back.
Yeah.
So that is a process as well, like figuring that out and detaching with love. Like I remember Googling how not to care. I
Oh,
literally Googled how to not care because I care so much. And that's where this love was coming. And that was as we call it, codependency. I cared
yeah.
so much and I was doing so much. So I guess it was just a little bit of, okay, I need to self-preserve, but also care,
Mm.
self-preserve, but also care, and kind of oscillate back and forth. And when I was with him and in the muck, that's what I started doing. I started like, as hard as it was, I would, make sure that I'm getting my needs met. So I practice radical self-care. So not just, bubble
Mm.
baths and like things like that, like radical
Yeah.
self-care. So that's being, getting my good nutrition, my food in, getting exercise, going to yoga practice, getting sleep, having rest and recovery moments for myself of where my I needed to down regulate my nervous system. So I know this from all my training. It's like, okay, Andrea, what's going to down regulate your nervous system? So I did things like my yoga, my breath work, Reading is very down regulating. I'm an avid reader and I love it. I even listen to audibles. I'll go for power walks while I'm listening to books on Audible, or just going for a walk. And so and then also connecting with friends, reaching out to support groups. There was not a lot of support groups out there other than ones like Al-Anon and things like that that are great and serve their purpose. But I needed positivity. I needed something to lift me up because I felt like I was drowning. And so that's where I just drew into all my training in happiness studies and positive psychology. And I just started slowly but surely applying all those minimal viable interventions that I know over
Hmm.
time is going to impact me and help me. And obviously the best of positive psychology and cognitive behavior therapy, like reframing and I would take my thinking to court. Like, that's not true because, like, I would say, Andrea, like,
I
maybe you're
love
not
that. Take your thinking to
thinking to court.
court.
Yeah. And
Be really
that's
analytical and deconstructing.
yes. And what it is, it's like, okay, like I'm having the thought that I'm not fun. Okay, well, that's not true because, and then you say it a whole bunch of times, that's not true because, and then you give another reason, that's not true because, you give another reason. And then taking it one step further is another way of looking at this and then you finish that off. So it's kind of like taking your thinking to court and then applying that whole blanket, that beautiful blanket of self compassion.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know what, Andrea? This is hard. What you're going through is hard. It makes sense that you're angry. It makes sense that you're sad. It makes sense that this is a struggle for you, but you're doing your best. It's like giving yourself, I always say, give yourself a pep talk.
Yeah.
And these are all recovery principles that can help if you're struggling with addictive behaviors or just addictive behaviors towards a addicted loved one, right?
Yeah.
These are all tools that we can really use to build our resilience, to help us with potential post-traumatic growth and help us to have radical acceptance of our emotions. And that's why I love acceptance and commitment therapy, because it's all about instead of rejecting our emotions, we accept them and we hold them with love and tenderness. And then we commit to taking actions that are more value based and aligned with what it is we want and how we want to show up for ourselves. So, those are all things that I did, like real time resilience and just applying all the interventions that can really help slowly but surely building yourself back up.
That's a
So,
lot. That is so good. What I really love is I'm all about the positive psychology, and you also included self-validation. So I'm sort of in this camp of, people ruminate and complain, and the thing is that everybody has this need to be seen, heard, and understood, right? By ourselves, not just other people, but it's like like a need, right? And so this validation that you were talking about is so critical because I feel like until somebody's feelings are validated, they can't get off of them. Right.
mhm.
That's why people yell because it's like, I need to get my point across. I'm not getting my point across. And so people start yelling, they start repeating. Like you've seen people in these well, we've all been in those arguments. I'm all trying to play like that's never happened to me. But you get into these arguments where you start yelling and repeating. It's because we don't feel like we're being heard. And so I think, if we can self-validate, like in your case, if the person just leaves and then you're just left with all your feelings, then, I heard a lot of self-responsibility, right? You validated your feelings, you questioned these negative thoughts, how did you say it? You're taking your thoughts to trial or
Taking your thinking to court. Yeah,
take
take
your
your
take
thinking
your
to
thing.
court.
I'm gonna have to write that down. Taking your thing to court is so good because that is in your practical solution of that's not true because. Like I feel like if we could just sit down with a pen and piece of paper and do the journaling every morning and just really confront what are the negative thoughts that we have about ourselves, really challenging that. And it's not true because
Yeah. And this is
so
just one
important.
intervention. Like, take your thinking to court. You can sit down, like, I'm having the thought that. And what that does is it detaches you from your thought. So we
Yeah.
are not our thoughts. And that way you can say, and this thought's making me feel. And then you fill in the blank. It's like I'm feeling frustrated, angry, verklempt, like sad, joyful, whatever your emotion is. It's like I'm in the thought. And so, what's a better feeling thought? And this is a
Yeah,
reframe. So the
a reframe.
reframe can really support you. And sometimes I'll even have like, I'll even write out my reframes, or I'll have my clients rewrite out their reframes, because it's like, it's so powerful and it can be your mantra. It's like,
Hmm.
that's not true because I'm actually fun and I am sexy and people might want to date me. If my thought was that nobody's going to want to date me, it's
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
that's not true because you're actually blah, blah, blah. And then you give yourself that pep talk. And it's not that we're going into a fake world. We're just actually taking our thinking to court, because sometimes we have such limiting beliefs, and this is the best of neuroscience. If we can reframe things and we can use it to our advantage to help build ourselves back up, and there's been so much science about neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, how we can rewire our brain.
Mhm.
This is huge for addictive behaviors as well, because if we learn something, we can unlearn it. Or if we have a
Mhm.
constant repetitive thinking pattern, we can acknowledge it. And to your point, that rumination thing that you're talking about is going down that neurological pathway over and over again. And then
Mhm.
if we just take that moment to validate that emotion and to say, okay, I see you, I feel you, I acknowledge you. It could be as simple as that. That's all we need for healing. And to then create a better feeling thought, or another way of looking at this is, or just a reframe. It's like that kid that's like screaming at you. If you don't listen to the kid, it's going to get louder.
Mhm.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing with our emotions. If we're not listening to them, they're going to get louder. We'll feel like we have to defend them more. And so I always say, that if you sweep your emotions under the carpet, eventually there's going to be a big bulge there.
The truth. Yeah, and there's these, ideas about what we resist persists,
Bingo.
right? Yeah. I love the IFS model, the internal family systems model, where these are parts that are actually trying to help you. Even addiction, in a sense, is trying to help you. It's a distraction from your pain. And I've always said the purpose of obsession is distraction, but until I really got into like the IFS model, I didn't understand how these parts were actually trying to help me by distracting me from pain I couldn't resolve, right?
Yeah.
Pain I couldn't heal by myself. And so I love the self-validation, and listen, it's not like toxic positivity is the denial of negative feelings, and that's not what I'm getting from you.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's
All
processing to
emotions.
resolution. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
And all emotions are so powerful, and exactly what you're saying, they're communication pathways. So you can ask yourself, like, what is this anger telling me? Or think about it, like anger can actually be a good thing because
Oh,
anger
yeah.
can motivate you, right? Stress can actually be a good thing because it motivates us for change and taking action. And so when we minimize our emotions, we're not really listening to the communication that they're trying to say to us, right? And I always say, let joy be your magnet. So, what's joyful for you? What's energizing you? Let that pull you in that direction. Sometimes we lose ourselves so much, like I did when I was in the muck. It's like, okay, I need to re tap into what does Andrea love? Who am I when
Oh
nobody's
my gosh.
watching? Right? Like, what do I do on a Saturday if I could, wake up on Saturday and do whatever I want? What's Andrea doing? It's like, and you
Yeah.
can do that for yourself too. It's just like reinvestigating, rediscovery, and letting all the emotions, I don't even say good or bad because they're all good and bad, right? They're
Yeah.
all like, all emotions are important, and they're a communication tool that can give us insight into the direction. So that sadness and that pain, recognizing that I'm a great person, it makes sense that I have that emotion of sadness, right?
Yeah.
That anger is keeping me safe because it's moving me away from that my addicted loved one that maybe is a bit of a lot abusive, with his
Yeah.
language and things like that. So it's really important to recognize that emotions and have that, psychological flexibility. When we acknowledge our emotions and we sit with all of them and we see them, honor them, give them love, compassion, and understanding, and the permission to be human, then we can move into more places of, coming into the prefrontal cortex, allowing our brain to actually think about what it is, how we want to respond, or how we need to move forward. We can go into our life with more value driven action. And that is so, so powerful.
Yeah, mood follows action. When you're taking the right action, it does lead to better feelings, better results, better outcomes, all that stuff. It sounds like you did a ton of work on your self-esteem. And, when people come to me with relationship issues, I never speak badly of the other person because I don't want to like, if I had a girlfriend come to me, she's complaining about her boyfriend. I never talk bad about him because I don't want to put her in a position to defend him, if that makes sense. So my thinking is always, oh, we need to build up our own self-esteem. And it sounds like your self-esteem was high when you got into the relationship, could have been low, dealing with a lot of abuse, accepting a lot of abuse for a period of time can really do a number on your self-esteem. It sounds like you've come out of that. And I just wonder, how do you set boundaries with people in your life now? Like, do you limit the amount of access people have to you if people present with things that are challenging? Like, how do you manage that? Like, because a lot of times you see people like get into relationship after relationship that's negative. Like we pick the same person just with a different face, right? How did you break that cycle and start inviting in relationships that were loving and nurturing and healthy?
Okay, so many amazing questions there.
Sorry, that was a lot.
I love it though. Okay, so I love that you brought up this idea of self-esteem and self. So what I did is I shifted away from this idea. Self-esteem can sort of be contingent on what other people think of us, right? And so I like to think of it now, and I really changed how I approach this. It's all about self-worth. So
Self-worth, yeah.
recognize, yeah. So I love this idea of focusing on your worthiness of yourself. And
Mm,
so, and this is about becoming the and increasing your agency. So, agency in psychology is basically being an agent of your life. It's like
mm,
detaching your happiness and your well being from anyone else around you and taking ownership of what you have control over, which is only you. And
yeah.
so, we know the three C's: you didn't cause it, can't control it, can't cure it. And then what we do is we focus on the things that we can control. So, self care, self compassion, community, the people that we surround ourselves with, and have the courage to focus on us. And those are the four C's of the Saving You is Killing Me community.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, but this applies to everywhere. Like this is all about recovering you. And so, so I love that you brought that up, and it's really creating this ability to turn the lens on you. What are you needing? Every morning I wake up and I ask, what am I feeling? What am I needing? What am I wanting? Those three questions can tap you into yourself. It's like, okay, well, here's what I feel. Here's what I need. Here's what I'd like. And it really does help me move in the direction that feels aligned with you and your values and what you're needing. Right. And so I find that that really helps you become the agent of your life. Nobody, so even with your friend, for the example that she came in and like, yes, always let your friends swamp, of course. But then it gets to the point where like, you don't want to be in agreement with them because then the next day they're in love and they're like, how dare you? You said this about
Yeah, yeah,
so you don't
yeah.
want to go down that path, but just listening, right? Active, constructive listening. Like I hear that you're really frustrated with this, and you are just the person to do that. You're amazing at that. And so, so we want to recognize that. Okay, well, bring it back to her. Like, okay, well, what are you in control of, or what do you need? Like even asking them, what
Mm,
do you need? Like, what's alive in you here? So it sounds like you're needing respect. It sounds like you're needing more spontaneity. It sounds like like you can help them figure out what they're needing. But I think that that is such an important distinction, is like thinking about every time you do things for yourself, you're building your self-worth. Your
hmm.
worth and your evaluation of yourself depends on you. And then
Yeah.
that'll help boost your self-esteem. We don't want to equate our how we feel about ourselves with anyone else's behavior. They're doing that. I used to always say with my addicted love, I'm going to just let him be an a-hole all on his own. Like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
contribute to that because sometimes he would push my buttons. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just going to let him be that on his own. And I would just like gray stone, if there's an expression like in with, because there's a lot of tendency towards addiction-induced narcissism, where people focus only on themselves because and their addiction,
Oh,
and so
yeah.
they forget about all the other people in their lives, or they use them as a source of energy to
Right.
feed
Yeah.
their addiction. So,
Right.
so there's that. And so, yeah. So, and then you talked about boundaries. And so I always say, so boundaries and how I've moved forward, boundaries have this weird way of making us think that we're trying to control someone else. So for example, it's like, you can't do drugs in the house. It's like I'm trying to like tell him he can't do drugs in the house. Like that's not a boundary. That's a dictation, a command, trying to control
Control.
someone else.
Yeah.
Right. So I always say turn boundaries into say that they are rules to live by. Because as
Mm.
soon as you say rules to live by, you take your agency back and you're in control of your own well being and your needs. So instead of thinking that you're creating boundaries, like I'll only have, depending on what you're dealing with addictive behaviors, but say your goal was just to decrease alcohol consumption, and you say, okay, I'm only going to drink alcohol on weekends, and so, or I'm going to make sure I drink all my water before I allow myself to have one glass of wine.
Yeah, we don't teach moderation on this podcast.
No, no moderation. Okay,
No,
so no, we won't do that.
we
Okay,
don't we
take
don't
it
teach
away.
we don't need we don't but we do and the boundaries and by the way, I love what you're saying. I'm totally tracking, but and what I'm hearing is that we don't set boundaries for other people. We set boundaries for ourselves.
Ourselves. That's right. And that's the problem. So
Yeah.
boundaries, they can seem like, oh, I'm gonna like tell this person what to do. Okay, so bad example that I gave. And I was just kicking in the dark. So another one would be my rule to live by is every morning I get up and I'm gonna walk my dogs. Like so rules to live by
Yeah.
create and they're there for helping you. So my rule to
Yeah.
live by is, every morning I chug a whole glass of water, or my rules to live by and creating rules to live by it is creating boundaries. So
Yeah.
if you think about what would be an example of a boundary for you?
Well, I was thinking, we were talking a little bit before about like workaholism and perfectionism. And like, I tend to fall in the workaholism camp. So a boundary for me, because I will burn out. I do this thing where I get these projects and I get really excited about them. I love a challenge, right? I love being creative and projects. But if I don't put a boundary on my day, like how many hours I work, like I've had to literally put a backstop on my day. So like at 5 o'clock, I really have to try to stop working because I will work endlessly and then I crash and burn and then I have to lay on the couch for a month.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm
I
exaggerating.
especially love that your boundary is I have to try and stop at 5. So what I love about this, it just tells me how much of a hard worker you are and how you like you
That's
go, go,
so
go.
funny.
But I also really want to celebrate your permission to be human and your recognition that, you know what, this is if I don't set something up, I am going to be burnt out. I'm going to be exhausted. Then I'm no
I
help to anyone.
will.
Then I'm written off for a whole week or a month. So I just
Yeah.
want to celebrate that first. So then a rule to live by for you can be as simple as at 5 p.m., I shut things down. And that
Yeah.
can be your mantra. At 5 p.m., I shut things down. And
Yeah.
then, and you could further to that to make it kind of feed that perfectionism work like you love to work. At
Uh,
5 p.m., I shut the rest helps you so that you can come back
I know.
with so much more energy the next day. So you're going to get all these things done. And so that's why I love rules to live by because boundaries can sound and feel like a little bit stuffy or like rules or like almost like
Hard.
discipline or harsh or right. So if you make these just
Yeah.
fun rules to live by it
Fun.
and then why, then it can really help you. Like like why are you shutting it down at 5 so that I can come back tomorrow and just be a go getter. It's time. My rule to live by is I shut things down at 5 p.m. And we're not trying to shut them down. We shut them down at 5 p.m. so that tomorrow I can come back even stronger. Or
Yeah,
like whatever is going to resonate with you. We make our own rules to live by. And it's so powerful.
they really are. I literally put something on my calendar every day that's fun. So my calendar gets blocked off because I people have access to my calendar for meetings and coaching and stuff like that. So I put a backstop on it, and it's something fun. But I did say try because so I'm working with this idea that consistency doesn't necessarily mean daily. I bet you work with a lot of moms and stuff that, we have a lot of responsibilities and things happen. And if we're also following our intuition, sometimes intuition sort of gets inspired at inconvenient times. And so, like, I know you work with a lot of people who writing books and things like that. So when I was writing my book, there were times when I felt like if I didn't get it all out, like the muse would leave. Do you know what I mean? So I do allow for a little bit of flexibility, but I just have to be very careful because I will go totally into workaholic mode and then I burn out. And then what ends up happening is I feel it damages my self-worth.
Oh my
So
gosh. Well, just this self-awareness piece that you have is incredible. I think that's amazing. That's the first
30
step,
years of
self-awareness.
therapy, I better
Yeah.
have some self.
Self-awareness is amazing. I love this idea of consistency does not necessarily mean daily. So
Yeah.
in positive psychology and from Dr. Tal Ben Shahar, he talks about minimum
Oh, I
viable
love him.
interventions. And so these are tiny little things that we can do on a regular basis that have a huge impact over time.
Yeah.
So that consistency, for example, for me of drinking water every morning has
Hmm.
an impact over time than if I
Yeah.
just like didn't do it. But that doesn't mean that it has to be every single day. So, for example, consistency, I do yoga 3 times a week, and that's not every day, but that
Right.
consistency of doing yoga 3 times a week has that compound effect. It downregulates my nervous system,
Compound.
it helps me process stress. It's a keystone habit for me for that day. It feels so good. It declutters my mind, it makes my body mobile and supple, it makes my workouts better. Like, so if you can find, it doesn't have to be daily, it could just be
Yeah.
minimal viable interventions, small little things that you can do to have that compound effect. And we know from the Atomic Habits,
I was just gonna
Yeah,
say.
James Clear work, and we talk all about habits, like habit formation and consistency, especially when it comes to recovery, is
Yeah.
so important because it
Yeah.
helps us slowly but surely, one day at a time, maybe not every day, but consistently, even every other day, or can really help build neurological pathways for
Yeah.
change. And this is the key to lasting change, actually.
Yes. Yeah. And, he talks about the identity piece too of, I'm not somebody. Well, he does talk about like for working out, if your normal workout is an hour and you only have 15 minutes, it's better to do the 15 minutes because I think he's referring to momentum, right? Like we build this consistency leads to momentum, which carries us. There's a lot of talk about being self-disciplined and doing all these things. But I think that, what he's really referring to is building momentum and being able to, take those actions, those self-care actions, rather than fall to like resistance.
Yes, I love that so much. And in psychology, it's called activation energy. So it's like if
Mm.
you're in a toboggan and you're at the top of the hill, and in order to start, you got to kind of nudge it forward, and you're going to go down the hill on a sled. And then once you start going, you get that, like, you have the momentum. It's the
Yeah.
exact same thing. Sometimes it just takes us to, like, the power of counting to seven, or like I'm gonna do this for 7 minutes, and then if I feel like stopping, I can. But that's just the
Yeah.
activation. Getting started can it be all that you require and need.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many good tools. Um, I want to be respectful of your time. Maybe you're gonna have to come back. We'll do this again, talk about some more things because I feel like there are so many things. So you're doing the podcast, Saving You is Killing Me. Sounds like it's really wildly successful. It's such a need. People should check that out. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, yeah. So I have the Saving You is Killing Me support group. I've got the book, Saving You is Killing Me, Loving Someone with an Addiction. I also have a whole series that supports even children that are affected and impacted by addiction to Sunshine Through the Clouds. And then I just recently authored the book, Recovery Without Rock Bottom, Reclaiming Your Life from Addictive Behaviors. And this book
Girl, you are
is,
busy.
oh my gosh, but this book is my heart
Oh,
because this is the book that I wish that my ex-partner had, because he
yeah.
never identified with having an addiction. And I really want to spread the word that we need to redefine recovery, and that
Hmm.
recovery isn't for people who just struggle with addictive behaviors. It's also for anyone who just wants to get their lives back on track. We want to create
Yeah.
a life that feels so good that we don't want to escape from.
Yeah.
And so I flooded this book with everything to do with psychology, the best of neuroscience, the best of positive psychology. If we know what can make our lives really well, then why aren't we using that to help creating a life that feels really value-based driven, and that's aligned with really the best version of who we want to be? And so
Yeah.
this book is written to help people who are struggling with addictive behaviors, but also just people who want to get themselves back, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, listen, I so appreciate everything that you had to share. I love spending time with you. And thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Arlene. And thank you for everything that you do and everyone that you support. It's just so important.